Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is Corey Lee. And boy, I got another one for you. Have you ever ran across a person who take more pleasure in being mad than having peace? Have you ever ran across people that value their ability to complain about a problem they might have with you over and above even having that problem resolved at the root? Like, no reason to be mad at all. No, they would rather be upset than to have a problem resolved. You can't sit here and look at me and make it sound as if you don't know a lot of people in this world like that. A lot of people in this world are like that. And sadly, I'm going to tell you exactly what that is rooted in. That is rooted in unforgiveness. That is rooted in pride. That is rooted in anger, sinful anger, not some kind of righteous indignation or something of that sort. No, I'm talking about wrathful, vengeful, destructive anger. You know, I have always saw life through this particular lens, right? It is hard for me to trust angry people. And I'm not talking about somebody who is currently angry, but I'm talking about somebody who is mostly angry, like literally always angry. Like every time you hear from them, they got a problem with something to the extent of just being outright angry. And the reason why it is hard for me to trust angry people is because they are liable to do anything just to satisfy the flesh. They're liable to do anything just to satisfy their anger. And it's like they have this way of being high off anger. Oh yes, you can literally get addicted to being high off anger. Everybody want to talk about the cigarette smoker. Everybody want to talk about the pothead, but I think it's a lot more people in this world who are far more addicted to being high off anger. It's like once they get an attitude, they want to keep it. And they'll never let you apologize, explain yourself. It's like, yeah, they'll take it, like they'll accept it. But man, they got to go on and on and on and on. It's like, look, I get it. I told you it was a misunderstanding, and they just go on and on and on. It's like like the conversation done dragged on 3-4 hours now. Like you done already told them, hey man, like, hey, I ain't mean it like that. It wasn't really all that big a deal. Blah, blah, blah. But it just goes on and on and on, and it just does not stop whatsoever. It's like with these people, they make it sound as if you owe them for the remainder of your life, even for the smallest misunderstanding. And then sometime they will even make room for the problem to drag on further than it has to, just so that way they can have an even bigger reason to feel like you owe them even more. Sometimes people know what they're doing, right? Like a person know how to set up the situation to make it look worse than it is because they want to capitalize. Oh yes, people know how to capitalize off of making you look like the bad guy, an even worse guy. Even when it's just as simple as missing a phone call, right? Like you can miss a phone call and then like, let's just say they need something now and you miss that one phone call, right? A week go by, you didn't even realize they called. And then they'll call again and be like, I've been trying to get a hold of you for a week now. You're a week late responding to what it is, like responding to my emergency. It's like, well, if it was that big of an emergency, why didn't you just send me a text message? It's like, no, they wanted that week to go by so that way they got an even bigger reason to attack you over it. And it's like, because it's been a whole week, and they had a dying emergency and you missed a phone call, oh, it's like they take that as a reason to just go on and on and on and on and on. You like, look, I ain't know you called. Like, my daughter had my phone playing games. You must have been calling then. She must have cleared my notifications out. If I would have known you was calling, I probably would have called you back. I don't just entertain myself with flipping through the missed call list. If I see it, I'll say something. If I don't see it, it's just as good as never happening, unless I just so happen to stumble upon it, right? And it's like, oh, but this was a whole week now. A whole week done went by, and I had an emergency that you didn't answer. A whole week. And it's like, it just goes on and on and on and on. It's like, I remember you told me that if I need anything to call you, and I did, and a whole week go by, and it just goes on and on. You're like, look, it was a misunderstanding. I didn't know. Yeah, like, I get that, but it's been a week though. It just goes on and on and on. Like, you just be sitting there thinking to yourself, like, okay, I didn't even get a chance to hear about what the emergency was yet. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, no, we done had 8 conversations about me missing your call and how I should just feel so terrible about that. I've apologized in 7 different ways. We still ain't even got to the point of what the emergency was yet. Still ain't got to the point of what that was yet. Still. It just goes on and on and on. Trust me, man. A lot of times people, they like having reasons to capitalize off of you owing them something. You feeling like you need to be sorry for not answering to their every beck and call. Like, look, just thinking about it is making me want to go crazy. I am not lying to you, right? Like, I had a situation in my life a few years ago when, you know, I was working for somebody else, and, you know, I had some control over what I could and couldn't do at the place I was working at. And so, you know, I wanted to give a guy a complimentary service for him supporting the work and everything like that. And then come to find out the owner just wasn't going for it. Right. So I'm like, well, hey, man, like, this is what happened. You know, if you still want it, I'm either have to do it this way or I'm gonna have to do it at a later time. And this is the time frame I'll be able to do it. You know, I mean, the guy, he seemed so okay. He was like, you know, man, it's all right, man. Like, it ain't that big a deal. Over the years, I spent a lot of time around that particular person, a whole lot of time. I don't want to say a lot of time as if this was like my next door neighbor or my brother or something like that, but a significant amount of time. Like, every now and then, like, you know, he'd bring it up like, hey, you remember when you was supposed to, oh yeah, man, but it ain't no big deal, man, blah, 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 blah. Long story short, you know, I ended up becoming self-employed again, doing that same thing for work. And it's like, every time I would post pictures on the internet of me doing that same work, he would always call, yelling, arguing, reminding me of what I didn't do. And I'm like, wait a minute now, all that time I've been around you, I still offered to do it. And you, nah, man, it ain't no big deal. Nah, it ain't no big deal. But then it's like the moment I'm doing the same thing for somebody else, every time you say, no, it's not a big deal. Nah, like we don't really need it all like that. Now I get the phone calls and I got to take the blowback about how you felt about something that took place 4 years ago. And like, I hate to get personal, but sometimes this won't make sense unless I'm telling you a real story. Like, I don't have room to make one up right now. It's, oh, you hypocrite this, you call yourself a man of God and you lied to me. And I'm just like, well, no, wait. If you still want me to do it, I could come out and do it. No, nope, nope, nope. And then the guy would just go on and on and on and on. And I'm just like, okay, so what do you want then? Why are you calling me? I'm gonna tell you like what he calling for, right? Because a lot of people would do this. They are sent to make you respond in an ungodly way. And they will go on and on. They will even call themselves Christians, cussing you to the floor. Calling themselves Christians, cussing you up and down to the dang on ground. It won't even let you resolve the problem. Not to mention, like, you already tried to do that in the first place. It was all, nah, man, it's cool, man. Like, you know, like, I know you tried and yada, 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 yada. But then it's like, so what do you want then? Oh, I just want to remind you that you ain't perfect. Yeah, you make all these videos about how you such a man of God. And look at you. Like, you just be sitting there thinking to yourself, like, see, a lot of people are like this to provoke responses out of you. They're so like, you need to know when somebody is doing a certain thing with the intention of trying to manipulate your behavior. You need to know when the devil has got a hold of somebody in such a way to where the devil can walk right into them and flow right out of them and target you. And then, like, what'll also be helpful is to know why. Because the devil ain't targeting you just for fun. It's for a reason. All you got to do is think about what's going on in your life right now where it'll be all bad if your blessings got disturbed. Like, are you working on something right now that you need nothing less than the hand of God in? Is your breakthrough on the way? Right? Like, is there something you praying for? Are you trying to grow spiritually? Are you on a fast? Have you spent all morning in praise and worship and been bathing in the presence of God? And then here it comes. Sometimes you just need to know why. The devil don't want you pressing in, so he got to send these people around to do and say little stuff like that, all to get you to be moved out of your place, out of your position. Some people, when they try and do stuff or say stuff or act certain ways with the intentions of provoking a response, I don't always just not give them a response, but I choose what response to give them. See, like, they're looking for a certain response. They're not just looking for a response, right? Like, y'all need to know that when people are trying to provoke a response out of you, they're looking for a type of response. They're not just looking for a response. A response is not good enough. No, they want to get you out of your seat. They want to get you hot and mad and boiling. They want you to feel like you owe them everything. They want to have power over you. And when you respond in such a way that proves to them that they don't have power over you, oh, it just make the whole situation worse in their heads, right? Like, if you were to respond to them the way they're coming at you, I guarantee you in some kind of way, they're going to actually hear what you like. Oh man, you know, like, hey, like, you ain't got to act all like that about it. It's like, yeah, but you was. But I guarantee you, if you respond in such a way that prove to them that they don't have power over you, it's gonna make a lot of times, like, a lot of people's blood to start boiling. Like, how dare you? And then a lot of times people will actually come to themselves and realizing that they taking stuff too far. Dead serious. Like, when you respond to people with the love of God, it could do one thing or the other. It could get somebody to go even crazier, or it could get somebody to come to themselves and realize they taking matters too far, especially when they are trying to provoke you to anger. Don't let people provoke you to anger too easily, because it ain't worth it. If you really sit back and think about what some of this stuff is, like, okay, at the core of the matter, what is it? A bunch of stupid stuff. Like, a bunch of stuff both of y'all could live without. Like, a bunch of stuff none of y'all sit back and think about on a regular day. And just all of a sudden, it's now that big of a deal. After all this time, you could have talked about it. Why now? After all the times it should have been a big deal. Why now? And out of all the ways you can address it, why like this? Why? Why like this? It's because they're trying to provoke a certain type of response out of you. That's all. People are acting a certain way toward you over even just something as small as a misunderstanding, right? A lot of times they really don't know that their behavior is rooted in witchcraft. When they're trying to provoke responses out of you, they really don't know that their behavior is rooted in witchcraft. People who do and say stuff with the intention of provoking somebody else to anger don't really know that that's witchcraft. That's manipulation. It really is, because like if they really sat back and think about it, they really don't gotta address the matter like that, but instead they came like this, crazy, hot-headed, boneheaded. But what you need to know is that the moment you allow somebody to believe that they are capable of provoking you, especially provoking you to be ungodly, they're gonna do it again. Because once they see that that got to you, once they see that that worked, like it's not like you give into it once and they just like, okay, well maybe I'm just, hey. No, you can't satisfy evil. Evil is a black hole that wants more and more. More and more. Once you give it power, it's going to want more of it. I know y'all heard the phrase, if you give the devil an inch, he'll take a mile. It's the same thing. But in this case, if you give somebody a reason to have a cow, they're not just gonna milk it dry. They'll butcher it too. Oh yeah. There are some people that just don't have a cow the right way. It's like, yeah, milk the cow, but man, don't kill it. Don't you want milk forever? See, some people don't just want you to admit to being wrong. No, they want you to always feel like you were the bad guy for the remainder of your life. No, people don't just want an apology. They want to capitalize off the situation and play their hand to the fullest extent. All the way until they eventually hit a brick wall. All the way until they eventually burn bridges they can never cross again. And they don't really see that that's what they doing. All the way until they eventually on the block list and they'll never be able to call you again. All because of what? I chose to resolve matters like that. Oh. I chose to address matters that I don't want resolved. That's what a lot of people like. They like just being able to have stuff to address. They like chips on their shoulder. People get high off chips on their shoulder because there's already anger built up inside of them. And when they can have the illusion of valid reasons to express that anger, they will. And the last thing they want is to not have valid reasons to express the anger inside of them. So they got to craft situations that make them seem valid for how they already are on the inside. They got to craft situations to make their behavior seem valid for how they already are on the inside. Nothing is as big of a deal as the power you give it, right? So you need to know that. Don't allow these people to move you. Don't give the stuff power. Some people do what they do because why? They want power over you. Some people act the way they act because they want power over you. And if you allow their tactics and actions and all of that kind of stuff to sit in your mind and fester and boil, it's eventually gonna come out of you and then you're gonna play right into their hand. Some people are skilled at just going tit for tat. Right? Like who can be the worst person, right? Some people are skilled in just being able to sneak this back and forth and little subtle ways. Some people are skilled at just having dog style arguments, a straight up dog fight. You know what I mean? Some people are skilled at just dog fight arguments. I'm not lying to you. They just like that kind of stuff. Like even if it might make them mad, but some people like to be mad, or they like to have the illusion of valid reasons for why they are that mad, because it's something on the inside of them that is not quite rooted in Christ. It's something on the inside of them that is rooted in anger, unforgiveness, bitterness. The Bible say that a root of bitterness defiles many. All it takes is for one person's root of bitterness to come springing off on somebody else. And if you sit there and tolerate that for too long, it's going to eventually work on you. And you won't even see it. Next thing you know, every time you get by yourself, you replaying the situation in your head. Every time you get some quiet time, now you verbalizing everything you ought to have said to them. Every time even when you go to prayer, you can't even sit there and have a conversation with God without drifting off into the dust somewhere, just talking about the stuff in the back of your mind. It's like, come on, man. Other people's bitterness will eventually become yours. And bitterness is hard to deal with. Trust me, I know. All it's gonna take is for some toxic people to just throw their emotions off on you every time they feel a certain way that you never address as far as you having your peace, right? Because your peace matter too. It's gonna eventually work on you in a way to where even without hearing from them, even without seeing them in 6 months, you still won't have peace. It's like every few hours you just replaying it all over again, allowing them to rent space in your head, and you can't even focus on the Bible. Like, you can't even focus on a prayer. You can't even have a praise and worship session by yourself in the car without talking about it to yourself. Trust me, man, I know exactly what I'm talking about. I ain't just making this sound deeper than what it is. This is how it works. And you gotta pay attention. Like, that's why I don't really be on Facebook like that these days. I don't want to. It's too much bitterness on there. And a lot of people got a right to be angry about a lot of stuff, but it's too much of other people's pointless bitterness, right? Like, to them, it ain't pointless. It's the only thing that matter. But to you thinking about it, like, you can honestly live without giving that so much power. Like, you could have so much freedom if you just forgot all about that. And not everything is meant to be forgotten about. Stuff is meant to be dealt with. Time by itself does not heal wounds. It's not about how much time go by that heals a wound. You have to properly treat and dress the wound. I mean, you gotta disinfect the wound. You gotta clean the wound and then put a fresh Band-Aid on it. Make sure more dirt ain't collecting inside that wound. Just letting time go by won't help you get over nothing. Stuff gotta be addressed at the root. Some alcohol pads and some gauze and a little bit of air here and there and all of that kind of stuff. Like, making sure you ain't opening the wound over and over again. And what a root of bitterness really is, it's like a cycle of opening the same wound. And you really don't like the way opening the wound feels, but for some odd reason, you just can't stop doing it. Bitterness will keep you in a cycle of opening the same wound over and over again, all the way to the point to where the stuff happened 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5, 10 years ago. And all it's gonna take is for a trigger word to come by, some familiar face that remind you of that person, and you right back spiraling down into that again. But let me tell you something though. Forgiveness works on both sides. If somebody is bitter over something that they don't forgive you over, don't let their bitterness become your bitterness too. Like, you gotta even forgive their unforgiveness, especially when you know it's something that's worth it, right? Like a big deal, something that's actually that big of a deal for real. But over this little small stuff, like, man, look, yeah, you need to forgive that too, but look, don't put too much thought in that. Just because other people took it differently than how you intended it, don't mean that you need to be somewhere caught up feeling bad about it. A lot of people might be masculine in appearance. They might be masculine in tone of voice. They might be masculine in how they talk, walk, dress, but when it comes to the heart, fragile. Fragile. Yeah, I mean, they might have even been through some stuff in their life, but they can't have one simple misunderstanding without taking it to the fullest extent. And you want to know what that is? That's arrogance. How dare you get a speck of mud on my white Jordan 4s? A speck of dirt. Well, it's raining outside. Yeah, but you ain't have to. Look, they shoes, man. Ah, nah. Come here, you owe me a new pair. Yeah, says the guy that wore them outside in the rain. Nah, but you stepped on my toe. So you owe me a new pair. It was an accident. Yeah, I get that. But you came all the way over here. My bad, you called me over here. I ain't realize how far out your foot was. Nah, man. These ain't coming clean. It's like, look, man, I apologized. And if a pair of shoes is worth you cutting a friendship in half, then so be it. Here, take mine and never speak to me again. You know what I'm saying? Like, I ain't about to be on all that, bro. Like, hey, man, but look, like, that's just an analogy, but some people's Jordans is worth more than they kids. More than they everything. Like, I ain't lying. Like, I like me a pair of Jordans too, but I ain't the kind of person that's gonna make you feel like you owe me a new pair of shoes because you accidentally stepped on my foot. It's like, I knew what I was doing when I wore these outside. I knew what I was doing when I wore these to the festival. I could actually end up trampled. You know what I'm saying? Like, I knew what I was doing. So, hey, like, don't even look at me like you owe me something, because you don't. They just like a pair of tennis shoes, like, for real. I mean, but some of this stuff, man, people put too much value on small stuff, on just stuff that really just ain't that deep. For real. Some of the stuff just ain't that deep. Everybody don't intend everybody don't intend how you take it. You know what I'm saying? And as long as you can step back from the moment and just learn to see stuff that way, like, what if they ain't intended the way I took it? And with that being said, why am I tripping? I'm over here making them the devil, and the whole time they wasn't even thinking about nothing. Like, the whole time it was like they were just being cool. They just thought it was another day. And I'm over here making them the devil over something that wasn't even directed at me. I'm over here making them the devil over something that they thought was just another neutral thing. Like, if you got a real deep issue with somebody about anything, I urge you to just go to that person and just address the problem. Just address what the real problem is. I'm not used to going to voicemail. I'm not used to being put on hold. But, like, according to how I see it, everybody has always been my biggest fan. And for you to put me on hold, it really kind of made me feel funny. Look, a lot of people ain't gonna do that. Why? Because they want to keep their pride to themselves. They don't want to even reveal how arrogant a lot of people is, right? Like they don't want to reveal their own arrogance, but still, just do something. Like, hey, man, like, hey, I ain't mean to get mad at you, man. Like, you know, I got put on hold and I just kind of felt like my time wouldn't be valued. Oh, man, you know what? Like, I totally understand, but I didn't even intend to have you on hold that long. Something was going on with my daughter and I forgot all about the phone because we had an emergency. Right? Like, once you come up with a way to address your issues professionally with people, you will realize stuff really ain't what you feel like it is. Stuff really ain't how you take it. And I understand a lot of the reason why people take stuff a certain way is usually because of their own life experiences, stuff they've been through before. And it causes them to color the way they see things that happen in their lives. But your life experiences is not always everybody else's problem to solve. How you see it because of what you've been through before is not always somebody else's obstacle to walk around. Nobody knows how you're going to internalize anything but you. And so you can't make that somebody else's responsibility to make up for, especially if it ain't even that deep. Most of the stuff really ain't that deep. He looked at me funny. What? You sound like a second grader. All because he looked at you funny? Oh, now that mean blackball him, right? Make sure him and his family never eat. All because he looked at you funny. What if he was thinking about something and was staring off into space and didn't even realize he was staring your direction? Stuff like that happen all the time. What if they was going through something personally and they just already had that facial expression and you just took it the wrong way because they looked at you with that facial expression, but that expression wasn't aimed at you? All because you sounded mean when you said it? What? Sounded mean? I know a lot of people that sound mean by nature. Like that's just how they talk. For real, just how they talk. Like you don't know what that person going through that made them come up with that tone of voice. All you got to do is ask yourself this: did I say anything to that person to make them, like, to give them a reason at all to even come at me like that? No. Okay, so it ain't me, right? I ain't the problem, which means they got a personal problem, which means I ain't got nothing to be mad about. But no, man, like this world of people just love being mad. People just get high off being mad. For real, they just do. People get high off having something against somebody. Y'all call it a grudge. I call it a drug. People love being high off grudges. It make them feel powerful. It just is what it is. But you want to know something? The Bible say that when you don't forgive people of their sins, God will not forgive you of your sins. And when you don't forgive people of stuff that they do that ain't even a sin, oh, you could just imagine how God feel about that, right? Like, how can he forgive you of what you did do sinful if you won't even forgive somebody of a misunderstanding? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, how can you expect for God to forgive you of something you knew you did wrong if you can't even forgive somebody over something they didn't even know they did wrong as far as how you internalized it? If you expect for God to forgive you over stuff you knew you did that you knew was a big deal, how do you think he feel when you don't forgive people over stuff that ain't even a big deal? That ain't even a big deal. That almost remind me of that parable that was in scripture when this guy had to go to the king and he was begging to get out of debt, or else he was going to be put in slavery, and the king forgave his debt. But then when somebody owed him money, he went and held him to the flame over it. Oh, and the king heard about it. Not only did he put him in prison, his whole household was sold into slavery to pay off the first debt that he once had forgiven. When you don't forgive people of their debts toward you, you could pretty much bet that yours will be counted against you. Like, you could pretty much bet. And the Bible also says this too, that when you don't forgive your brother, you'll be handed over to the tormentors. And what are the tormentors? Demons. And how will demons torment people? There's a number of ways that can happen. A number of ways you can be handed over to the tormentors. And one of the most common ways to be handed over to the tormentors due to unforgiveness is mental oppression. You getting drugged down by the weight of this matter that ain't even that big a deal because you just won't forgive it. And even if it is a big deal, you still gotta forgive it. Still. Mental oppression is like one of the most common ways. Depression, anxiety. I mean, we live in a world full of unforgiving people that's trying to find a cure to anxiety. Forgive and be forgiven. It's like a weight that'll just be lifted off your chest, man. I promise you it is. Let stuff go. When people won't forgive you, they want to take stuff too far, let it go. Leave it in God's hands. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, I will repay. Leave it in God's hands. That's all you can do. But other than that, y'all, I thank y'all for coming by. And stay tuned for the next one. And, that's hoping you do see the next one. So thank you.